Today on the Dad the Best I Can show.
You know, my dad said to me, probably the greatest lesson anybody's ever said to me. He said, it's your scholarship. And, if you want to go somewhere else, and we didn't have a lot of money at the time. So I would have been, it's not like I could have just switched and he would have picked up tuition. I mean, it wasn't a good financial time for us. So I don't know what I would have done, but he said, it's your scholarship. If you want to quit, I'm not going to keep you from doing it. But I want you to know that if you quit now, then as you go through life, when times are tough, you're going to find it easier and easier to quit. And I hope that you don't make that decision. And of course, he put it right back on me, which is what he should have done. I got out of the car angry because he didn't give me an out. And I realized, there's no way how can I walk away from this with what he just said to me? I'm basically setting myself up for failure later.
Welcome to the Dad the Best I Can show. My name is Rob Roseman. Who wants to be a millionaire legend, Chicago futures trader, Vegas poker pro. Now I'm a dad to 3 kids, ages 7, 5, and 2. Phew! Wears me out just thinking about it. Each week we bring on high-performing dads like you, entrepreneurs like Jesse Itzler, CEOs like David Cancel from Drift.com, athletes like Ken Rideout, best-selling children's authors like Zach Bush, to tell us your stories, your dad tips and tricks, to help all of us make it through dad life. We have a brand new website over at dadthebestican.com. Go on over to dadthebestican.com and sign up with your email. It's 100% free, of course. Be the first to hear brand new dad guests and get weekly dad tips in your inbox. Okay, enough out of me. On to today's show. All right, welcome to the Dad the Best I Can show. Today we are lucky to be joined by Hank McLarty. Hank is a former Auburn football player. He's the founder of Gratus Capital, Atlanta's premier wealth management firm, and he is a dad. Hey, Hank, how's it going today?
Doing great, Rob. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Where are you calling in from?
Well, I'm actually over at my office at Gratus Capital.
You're in Atlanta, is that right?
Yeah.
So I think we used to be neighbors in a former life. I'm in Roswell, and we're down the street from your alma mater, Roswell High.
Yes, the Hornets, the mighty Hornets.
Yes, we went to a couple games this year. It's a fun time for the kids.
Yeah, that whole environment up there has changed a great deal since I grew up in Roswell, but that's certainly where the whole football career got started for me.
Yes. So you are a dad. How old are your kids now?
My kids are 23 and about to graduate college, and 21 will be graduating next year.
Awesome. So I want to talk football, finance, fatherhood, but before we start, we have to talk about this Alabama-Auburn game. My friend Jason down the street told me to ask you if you have 1 second. He said you know what that means.
Yeah, it seems like the 1 second thing always seems to apply with the Auburn-Alabama game. It was a special weekend, actually, because I was on the 1989 team, which was the first time that Alabama ever came to Auburn, was in 1989. And so they were ranked number 1 in the country at the time, and we had a couple of losses, and they were definitely predicted to win the game. And it was a huge, huge night. They came in and we beat them, and so our team from 30 years ago was honored this past Saturday as the team from 2019 was preparing to play Alabama in a very similar situation. So our team from 30 years ago, we got to do the Tiger Walk and walk with the team to the stadium, and the fans were amazing. And we got to go out on the field with our former head coach, Pat Dye, who was, my coach when I was there. And then my dad and I got to be on the sideline for the whole second half, which was any of you that watched that game know it was an insane football game, especially the fourth quarter. And my dad and I were literally right there when that field goal hit the upright. The ball landed about 30 feet from us. And then, of course, the fans stormed the field. And it was just a great time to be there with my dad, a great time to be there with my former teammates and roommates. It was just a really special day. And of course, we beat Bama. So that added
Yes.
a little icing on the cake, too.
Let's talk a little bit about Hank McLarty, the early years. Can you talk about your come up, your football career?
Yeah. Yeah. So I really don't even know why. Like my sophomore year in high school, I had never been a starter for my football team, either in little league or high school. I was a decent athlete, but not a great athlete. But for some reason, my sophomore year in high school, I decided to set a goal that I was going to get a scholarship to play college football. And for anybody listening, understanding high school and college football, usually people that get scholarships to play college football at a major college, they're a dominant player on their team. They've been starting since their sophomore or even maybe freshman year. And, they're a standout. And I wasn't even, like I said, I wasn't even starting for my team. I was barely starting for the JV team my 10th grade year. So, as I went into my junior year and I still wasn't a starter, but I was working out all the time. A lot of my friends were experimenting with alcohol and marijuana and so forth. And I spent my weekends running sprints up at the school and constantly working out and just pursuing this goal. But at the end of my junior year, I still wasn't a starter for the team. And I was like, this goal is kind of seeming pretty far out there. I need to change the scenario. So I told my dad, I said, Dad, I got to get out of town. I got to get away from my girlfriend and friends and distractions. I got to go somewhere and really focus and see if I can have an amazing senior year. And so he had a friend that lived in Kentucky that had a small cabin on the Ohio River and had connections with a horse farm. So I drove up to Lexington. Gosh, I was only 16 at the time. I lived in this cabin up in Kentucky for the summer by myself. And now that my sons are 23 and 21, I can't even imagine letting my sons go live somewhere by themselves when they were 16. But for some reason, I did. And so I'd get up every morning and go to the local high school and run. And then I'd go throw hay on this horse farm and paint fences all day. And then I'd go to Wildcat Gym there in Lexington, and I'd work out every afternoon. And it was a lonely summer. I turned 17 up there and, hardly knew anybody. But I think when I came back to Roswell High School in August for football practice to get started, and my coaches saw I'd gotten in amazing shape that summer, and my coaches saw me, and I remember them saying, this could be the year for you. Like, you look amazing. You've been working out really hard. And so, the first couple of games that year were okay. I was playing middle linebacker, and then the third game was against our arch rival, Milton High School. And I don't know what happened in that game. I guess I got in what they call the zone. But man, I mean, it seemed like I had every tackle in that game, and just had an incredible game. And there was no scouts there to see me, but there were some scouts there to see some players on the other team. And I had such an incredible game that the next day I got full scholarship offers on a Saturday after that Friday night game from Auburn and from Tennessee, and then more would follow from Kentucky and Georgia. So, I ended up at the end of that season signing a full scholarship with Auburn, and I had a fantastic senior year. But that's kind of where everything got started in terms of me being able to play football at Auburn. And, then I signed that scholarship and couldn't seem to get out of my head, am I really good enough to be going to play football at Auburn? I mean, my gosh, I wasn't even able to be a starter at my high school until my senior year. And when I got over to Auburn and looked around me, I mean, I felt like a boy around a bunch of grown men. I mean, these were amazing athletes. They were huge. And it was a little bit intimidating. And so we got over there, and our first few days as freshmen in freshman practice, I was holding my own. But then we had our first day in full pads with the seniors or the rest of the upperclassmen. And, the first thing they do when you're a freshman is throw you up against the All-Americans and the seniors, because you're kind of like the new meat on the team that they can see if you can hold your own or not. So very first day in full pads, at Auburn. They lined the linebackers up across about 5 yards away from the offensive lineman. And of course, they lined me up as a freshman against Jim Thompson, who was a senior All-American. He's like 6'6", 300 pounds, and which is big. But in the 80s, that was monstrous. He was well known around the country and so forth. And I saw them lining me up to go against him, and I was like, oh my God, like this, I can't believe this is the first guy I'm going to have to go against. And so, I had been working out really hard. I mean, my work habits were amazing. My talent was okay, but my work habits were really, really strong. And so I was strong from working out. Well, they lined me up against him, and I thought this guy was going to break me in half. But somehow when they blew the whistle, and I got so low to the ground, because I knew if he got under me that he would flip me over. So this was a drill where it's not over till they let you go until somebody's on their back. So they blew the whistle, and I fired out, and I stayed really, really low, and somehow I got underneath him. And, next thing I know, I had him on his back, and I was like in a state of shock, and just lost. I'm swinging and trying to keep him on his back and screaming. And my linebacker coach came over, and he was a character, man. He had braces on both upper and lower teeth, and he always had like half a can of dip in his mouth. And so he came over and grabbed me by the face mask and started screaming, you kicked his ass, you kicked his ass. I can't believe it. Of course, dip's flying in my face, and I'm all wound up. And then, of course, they made me keep going against him. And his coach is screaming at him, you let a freshman beat you. And so we had to go at it 4 or 5 more times. And finally, he got the best of me. But, I'll tell you, I had a great day that day, and all the tackling drills and everything. But it took every ounce of me to keep up. And I remember coming in the locker room after that first day in full pads, going through all the drills, and the coach telling me that I had a great day. But I remember going into the locker room and thinking, wow, this is SEC football. Like, I literally had to fight to the death every second. This doesn't come easy to me. Like, this is what it's going to be like for the next 4 years. And, I struggled a little over the next 3 years. I was a struggle. I got awards for most improved in the off season, because again, my work ethic was never in question. It was just, these guys were amazing. Some of the best athletes in the world at this school that were so strong and so fast. And I felt like I was really fighting hard just to kind of keep up. And my sophomore year, one of the coaches came up behind me, and he was just trying to inspire me. He didn't mean to do anything by it, but he came up behind me and, kicked me. I was kind of bent over in a stance, and he kicked me in the ass and said, come on, McLarty, let's go, and when he kicked me in the ass, he didn't mean to, but his toe hit like right on the end of my tailbone, and it felt like 1,000 volts went straight up my spine. He just kind of hit, I guess, a funny bone or a nerve or something. And it was such intense pain that I lost it, and I spun around and I grabbed him in anger. And my head coach was in the tower watching practice, and he happened to be looking down when I guess it appeared to him, which I guess I did. I guess I attacked my coach. So they ran me off the field and basically told me they were going to run me. They were going to run me after practice till I puked every day, until they felt like I'd had enough. And so I'd go to practice, and the coaches were so angry at me, and then they ran me every day after practice. And so I called my dad, who was in Las Vegas at the time working, and I said, listen, Dad, I think I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to quit. And, they should have been running me. You don't turn on a coach, but I was an immature kid at the time. And so I told my dad I'm out. So he said, don't do anything. And within, 8 or 10 hours, he was in Auburn at the athletic dorm. And I was sitting in the car with him, about 250 pounds, just crying like a baby, crying, whining. These coaches they hate me. I don't need to be here. I need to move on. And, my dad said to me, probably the greatest lesson anybody's ever said to me. He said, it's your scholarship. And, if you want to go somewhere else, and we didn't have a lot of money at the time. So it's not like I could have just switched and he would have picked up tuition. I mean, it wasn't a good financial time for us. So I don't know what I would have done, but he said, it's your scholarship. If you want to quit, I'm not going to keep you from doing it. But I want you to know that if you quit now, then as you go through life, when times are tough, you're going to find it easier and easier to quit. And I hope that you don't make that decision. And of course, he put it right back on me, which is what he should have done. I got out of the car angry because he didn't give me an out. And I realized, there's no way how can I walk away from this with what he just said to me? I'm basically setting myself up for failure later so I stayed with it and I stuck it out, and they finally quit running me till I puked after every practice. And, things got better, and things got a lot better. And I learned a lot from that experience of things being really tough and wanting to give up, and then kind of hanging in there. Don't make decisions to walk away from something until when they're at their worst, because you're never going to make a wise decision in that moment. So that was a great lesson I learned from him. But yeah, so my junior year, I was ready to go. I'd been progressing. My dream of being a college football player was there, and I was getting ready to be a starter, and everything was going great. And then right when we started practice in the summer, I lost about 20 pounds over a 5-day period. Nobody could figure out why. My strength was going down rapidly, and I hit a guy in practice in a drill that normally I would have dominated this guy. And not only did it knock me down, it knocked me out. And I woke up packed in bags of ice. My temperature was like 105, and the training crew for the team were all surrounding me, and the doctors were called and so forth. And so they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and then ended up being that I had this blood disease that was attacking my immune system. And, long story short, they decided that my immune system was so weakened by this blood disease that they weren't going to let me play anymore. So I went on what they call a medical scholarship, where I was still on full scholarship for school, but I was not allowed to play football anymore. And, that started a very depressing time in my life, because I had been working for this goal, for a very long time, and, being a significant contributor to the team, and really being what I had dreamed of being was kind of right there. And then all of a sudden I was told I couldn't play anymore. So I quit going to classes for a few weeks, wouldn't get out of bed, went through the only time in my life that I know of that I was like physically and mentally depressed, and couldn't function. But, I got through it and had to become a decent student after that, and start focusing on what the rest of my life was going to look like. But, Coach Dye was an awesome head coach, and fortunately I got to see him this past weekend when I was over in Auburn. But, he put us through a lot. I mean, anybody that knows college football from back in those days, they know he was kind of a Bear Bryant type coach. He was a hard ass. He beat us up pretty good. But he would always say that he was preparing us not just for the game that weekend or for the season coming up. He was preparing us for life. And having gone through some of the things I've gone through in my life, I totally respect and appreciate where he was coming from. Although at the time I really didn't get it, but I'm really honored and grateful to have been a part of his program. And he's an amazing man. And, sometimes in immaturity and youth, you don't realize how great some of the leaders are around you until you get further on in life and kind of figure out what they were talking about,
Yeah. I mean, what are you, 19, 20 years old? That's a lot of things to be going on for a kid. And as you were telling that story, I'm the whole time picturing Rudy. I think they stole the screenplay from your life. That was, although you got the scholarship, but between the drills and everything, that's an incredible story. They need to option that for a movie one of these days.
Yeah, that would be. I like the Rudy movie. I don't know if mine qualifies for that, but it certainly was a journey, to get to that point. But I learned, like I said, a meeting, thinking about quitting. Setting a goal that frankly nobody in my life would have ever assumed that I could have achieved from where I started, and learning that if I just worked my ass off, that there's not a lot out there that I couldn't accomplish if I really focused on something and worked harder than everybody else. So a lot of valuable lessons came from that process, even though I never got to be that significant contributor on the field for Auburn. I learned a ton from that whole process that I just described to you.
Yeah, and just preview for the rest of the story, I'm sure you can agree with the fact that you're going to learn most of your lessons through failure, unfortunately, which to have to go through some of those things at that young age is awful at the time, but that probably did make you into the person and the dad that you ended up becoming.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely laid a foundation, for whatever it is that I'm good today. It definitely laid that foundation.
So do you think you got that fire and all that from your parents, from your dad, or do you think is that how he was? How did you become this so driven and willing to just throw yourself into the fire?
That's a good question. I don't think, my dad was not a goal oriented person. My mom wasn't, my brother, and it was just the four of us. So I honestly I don't know where that came from. I started working out when I was in like the seventh grade. So I'm not really sure. I remember when I was maybe first grade. I remember, back in the day, there was no cable. There was just ABC, CBS, and NBC, and every Sunday night they had the CBS movie. And I remember I was in the first grade, and the CBS movie that Sunday night was Rocky. And my dad, I had to go to bed like 8:30, or I don't even remember, but it was certainly before a 9 o'clock movie was coming on Sunday night. And I remember begging my dad. I was so interested in seeing this movie that I'd heard about this Rocky movie, and so I remember watching that movie. I begged and begged and begged, and then they let me stay up for a little while to watch some of this movie. And I remember asking my dad after, said, I want to work out like he did. I want to do some of those things like he did. Will you show me? And so then, even though my dad did not work out at the time, he showed me how to do push-ups and sit-ups and squat jumps and so forth. And then I asked him, would he test me every week? And so every Sunday he would say, okay, last week you did this many push-ups, last week you did this many sit-ups. And so that became like a thing, even though he didn't do them, but he would, and I don't know, my brother had no interest in that. None of my friends, I really don't know why, but at a very early age, I was focused on setting goals and, working out and different things like that. And I don't really honestly know where it came from.
Yeah, it's incredible. And now we're just at 21, 22 years old. And now we're going to get into your transition from football into your finance career. And this is what really kind of gave me chills hearing, besides your football story, just your meteoric rise in finance and then what transpires in the middle of that. Can you talk a little bit about your transition into finance and moving into the career world?
Yeah, so I will talk about all the success I had in an early age, and we'll get to the downfall here in a minute. So as I talk a little bit about all the success I had, just know that it's about to come with a massive dose of humility. So I say these things not to brag or talk about myself, but it's just you're about to hear the kind of the downside of it as well. So anyway, right out of college, I started with Merrill Lynch. I came to Atlanta with a finance degree, and I had no experience in sales or experience with finance, or I just had a degree. And so I kind of graduated as a guy that worked out a lot, had former football player and a degree, but not really any experience. And so an alumni from Auburn had all of his money at Merrill Lynch in Buckhead, and I interviewed with all the banks and brokerage firms in Atlanta. Nobody would hire me. And frankly, now that I own a company, I'm not sure I would have hired me either. But I had lunch with this alumni one day, and I was, complaining to him that I couldn't get anybody to hire me. He said, well, let me make a call over to my branch at Merrill Lynch where I have my money. And so anyway, he made a call over and told me I should talk to the manager there. And I did. They weren't really interested. So I kind of went over there and sat on the steps outside the office. I knew who the manager was, and I waited on him and just basically pestered him until he gave me a chance to talk to him. And he said, all right, we'll give you a chance to take the Series 7, and if you pass it, we'll keep you. If you don't, then we're not going to, we'll fire you immediately. In the meantime, you can go get lunches and move furniture, and you can wear jeans to work, So it wasn't the glamorous situation that I had envisioned, but anyway, I passed the Series 7. I started cold calling for Merrill Lynch and hated every minute of it. I was cold calling out of a book of list of names, and we had goals that we had to hit, as they called us rookies, so we were new to the firm, and we had goals that we had to hit to kind of advance to be on a different type of pay situation. And so we had to bring in a certain level of assets and new clients and new revenues and so forth. And we had, quarterly hurdles that we had to hit. And I was falling behind on those, and I was cold calling all day long and at night. I'm just kind of tired of people hanging up on me and telling me to screw off. And so one day, I was getting pretty fed up with this and thought about, that word I used earlier, quitting. And I cold called a company here in Atlanta, and the guy picked up the phone and he cussed me out worse than any football coach ever cussed me. And he's like, you sorry mother effer, calling me, and you guys call me all day long. I'm sick of your ass. Just went on and on and on, and just dropping F-bombs left and right. And he kind of caught me at a day where I was ready to quit anyway. And I said, screw this guy, man. I'm going to get in my car and drive out there and confront him. And so I literally hung the phone up and I drove out to where this company was. And I think initially when I got in the car, I was thinking, I'm going to go out there and kick this guy's ass. Like, what difference does it make? I'm going to quit anyway. But then I thought, as my temper lowered a little bit as I got closer and closer to the company, I thought, I'll just confront him and see if I can talk with him. Who knows what will happen. So I walk up and knocked on the door, and this was a company that was growing rapidly, but on very low margins. So they didn't have a lot of support staff. So the CEO and this guy who was his partner, they didn't have secretaries that were answering the doors and so forth, or assistants. So when I knocked on the door, he answered his own door. And he said, yeah, what do you want? And I said, well, I'm the mother effer that you just told to F off on the phone. I wanted to come out here and see what I could do to earn your business. And I kind of got up in his face when I said it, and his eyes got huge, and he said, oh, well, I didn't know you were going to come out here, and don't take it personal, and, come on in and let's talk for a few. So I went in, and I ended up spending about 3 hours with this guy. And I remember he had a newspaper out, and he was placing bets on all the sporting, the games, the baseball, football, whatever. And so we talked about sports. We talked about life. He said, I'd really like you to meet my partner, the CEO. And we just kind of hit it off. And I started going out and having lunches with him pretty regularly. And I had no idea what I was doing at the time with investments, but I built rapport with them, and I built a relationship with them. And so anyway, they were raising private equity money. And so as they were going through this process, they secured private equity money, and they called me up one day and they said, we want you to come out and pick up a check. We just got an investment in our company, and we're not sure what you're doing 100% with investments, but you can find somebody, but we want you to have the money, and we'll find somebody in your firm to partner with you to help. And so I had no idea how much money it was going to be. So I went out there and picked up a check for a little over $10 million and brought it back. And my goal for the whole program, for a 2-year program, was $10 million, and I was behind my goals. And so then immediately I passed all my goals. I graduated from the program, and I kind of became a star at the time, and literally not too long after I was thinking about quitting. So, there you go again. Don't ever quit when you're in a bad situation, because you're never going to think straight about it. So I started thinking, well, maybe I'm not the best with some of the fundamentals due to inexperience, but confronting people, being honest, working hard, that kind of thing, I think maybe I can do this business. So I set a goal at that point I wanted to make $1 million by the time I was 30. At the time I was 23. And so didn't quite know how I was going to do it, but other than just take amazing care of my clients and work really hard. So by the time I was 30, I was married. I had 2 amazing sons that were 4 and 2, and was making over $1 million. And, my career continued to progress. I moved my team from Merrill Lynch to Morgan Stanley. And then by the time I was 34, I was ranked one of the top 50 advisors across all firms in the country. And, I just had all this notoriety and awards, and, was on the cover of magazines. And And from a publicity and marketing perspective, I was kind of looking like the man. And in my head, I think I started believing I was the man. I was drinking my own Kool-Aid. So anyway, yeah, Morgan Stanley was flying me around the country to talk to groups of advisors about how I built my business and, how achieving success at such a young age. And so it was a really good time. And the humility that I think is necessary to manage success was not something that I had a high degree of at that time. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. It's such a young age to go through that. And then with young kids, I'm sure it's easy to, kind of get on autopilot and coast. So then what was the turn then when you're not even 30 years old? What happened then?
Yeah, well, actually, so I was like 34. I had achieved all this success, and I had another firm approach me, and this other firm approached me to leave Morgan Stanley, where I had a fantastic team of 9 people that I was working with. So I had a great team. I had a great group of clients, and I was approached by this other firm. They wanted me to leave Morgan Stanley. It was a really neat approach that they had at this firm. I won't go into a lot of details, but it was just a really neat, like a family office approach. And, they had already opened offices in Boca Raton and in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they had pulled in some teams from Merrill Lynch and at the time Smith Barney. And these were top-notch teams. I went and visited their offices, and I was like, okay. And so they wanted me to leave and come join them in Atlanta, which is where their headquarters were going to be. And they were going to pay me an awful lot of money up front to do this, along with continuing to pay me, the money that I had been earning. So I introduced my top clients to this firm's CEO. I introduced a few of my team members at Morgan Stanley to this new firm's CEO, and everybody thought it was great. And so everything was going really, really well. And I went into Morgan Stanley and I resigned. And Morgan Stanley was not at all happy about me resigning. And so I left Morgan Stanley to go over to this new firm. And I called the new firm, which was about a half a mile away in another building. And I said, I just resigned. I'm on my way over. And they said, oh, we thought you were resigning tomorrow. And then the famous words of our next round of funding is coming in tomorrow. We want to make sure and give you your check when you arrive. And so we'd like you to come in tomorrow. I'm like, okay, fine. I know my clients are ready to go. Several of them have met the CEO. This is going to be no problem. Well, long story short, they never got their next round of funding and they went bankrupt. And so my clients throughout this process lost confidence in me. And I can't say that I blame them. My team at Morgan Stanley, who were fantastic, they were doing a great job, but I delegated so much to the other parts of the team. They lost confidence in me. And so all of my team and all of my clients stayed at Morgan Stanley. So I had also gotten, as I said, pretty full of myself, lost some focus on my marriage. And as a result of all of this and some of my, I guess, ego and lack of focus, my wife and I divorced at that time as well. So the walls came crumbling down, so to speak. And before I knew it, I found myself living at a Residence Inn motel, moving my son's bunk beds into the hotel. And everything that I was worth at that point was based on the clients that I had and all the revenues that were being generated by these clients. And so I did not have clients anymore. I didn't have a team anymore, which meant suddenly my value to other firms that may be interested in bringing me on and so forth essentially went to zero. And so, I literally almost overnight went from being on the cover of magazines and being, the up and coming 34-year-old superstar in this business to not knowing what my next job was going to be, going through a divorce process, going to court, having all my previous year's tax returns looked at to determine what child support and alimony was going to be. And just going through an experience that I would not wish on anybody. And I'm not saying that other people have not gone through worse experiences, but for me, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the same time, I don't wish it on anybody. I mean, it's putting your kids to bed at night in bunk beds in a hotel and trying to keep a smile on your face while at the same time internally feeling like you're going to explode because you literally have no idea what you're going to do is what I felt. It's what I felt every day. And I did not want my kids to see me. I didn't want my kids to see me crying or upset. So once I got them to bed, I would go sit outside on the steps, and that's where I would do that. But it was a nightly thing. It was the first time in my life where I had no direction. I did not know what to do. And I'm usually really good. If I've got a plan, I can friggin' execute a plan, but I had no plan. And so it was a very humbling time, but again, it's a time that I wouldn't trade for anything where I'm at today, because it made me a much better father, a much better friend. I think the team that I work with now at my company, I treat them in a way that I was not probably capable of treating them before because I was so full of myself. So I think in every area of my life, it made me a better person. But again, it's not something I want to go through a second time. So.
Right. Yeah. And I do want to talk a lot about your comeback, and we can talk about that at the end, but you're just hearing you talk a little bit about going through the divorce, and how old were your kids at the time?
They were 4 and 6.
Wow. So I know there are a lot of dads out there listening that are either going through that or have been through that. Is there advice? I can't imagine how isolating it is, and how you do have to put up this front for your kids and kind of hide some of your resentment and anger and everything. What is that like going through it? And what kind of advice could you give other dads going through that kind of time?
Well, I think, if I think back to that time, I mean, we're talking about 2005, so it was 15 years ago. There was anger, resentment. If I could only get back what I had before, a lot of thoughts like that. Once the divorce is final, starting to, thinking about starting to date. Well, there's not many dates you're going to bring back to the Residence Inn. So I really felt isolated in terms of I was in such to me, was an embarrassing, uncomfortable situation. I really wouldn't open up to anybody. And I didn't want to tell anybody what was going on because I was ashamed of kind of what had happened. So not only was I going through this gut wrenching kind of feeling like losing my family, it was also, as you said, I think a good word of isolation, of, at least in my circumstances, feeling uncomfortable, going to talk to someone about it, or talking to a new, lady that I might have been interested in. I just kind of shut all that off because I didn't want to get into my situation, because I'd lost kind of that confidence of the direction and the plan that I had. But I think one of the things that, when I finally quit wanting things to go back to the way they were and realized that where they were going might be even better, that was a massive transition point. When I quit wanting to have my old clients back and quit wanting to have my team back, even though they had never done anything wrong. But when I quit kind of living in the past of what used to be and started thinking about, okay, that's over. Now, what am I going to make of it in the future? That's when things really started to change. And then I started looking at my ex-wife, who's obviously my partner in raising these children. I started treating her like a partner rather than the enemy. Then everything in our relationship dynamic shifted. Obviously, that took time. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight, but I consider her one of my close friends, and her husband and I we'd probably be best friends if they weren't married. I mean, he's an amazing guy, but when I needed to write a check and for an expense or something, and it was something that I probably could have contested, I just bit my tongue. If she needed time and she wanted me to have the boys, I took the boys. I just tried to make things, unless it was a big issue that I needed to put my foot down, I tried to make things, take my ego out of as much as possible and just be gracious towards her and my sons, and spend as much time with them. I would tell you another massive turning point was I had told my kids, because I played college football, I said, if either one of you ever want to play football, even though I'm not pushing you to, but if you ever want to play football, your first season, I'll coach you. And I'd said this long before this downfall. So I had much more time on my hands at that point. But of course, in 2005, in August of 05, my son, right when I started my new company and started to build a plan for the future, my older son said, Dad, I want to play football at NYO, which is, a youth organization in Buckhead. And so I said, oh my gosh, if there's ever a time I don't have the margin or the capacity to be a coach. I had never coached, Little League football in my life. I didn't even know what all was involved or this program or anything. So I paused when he asked me about that. And, maybe 30 seconds later, I said, a commitment's a commitment. I'll do it, and he jumped up and down and said, okay, well, I know the coaches are supposed to be there like tomorrow night to start drafting their teams. And I'm like, okay, here we go. So I went over and got some of the other dads, coaches there to show me the ropes. And it was 8-year-old football. It was serious. These guys were serious about this. It was much more serious than I thought it would be. So I drafted my team. I got some help. And then, we had 2 practices a week and a game, or we had 3 nights of the week committed to football, either with a game or practices. And, I would go to work every day. I had my new company with 1 assistant. And it was just me and her. That was it. I would go to work every day, and then I'd have to leave at like 3:30 to go over to the fields, 3:30 or 4 to get ready for practice. And I'm in a panic mode every day because I don't have any clients yet. And I'm starting this company with no revenues, and I have no business leaving the office to go coach a Little League football practice. I have no business leaving. Like, I am in desperation mode. I need to work more than 24 hours a day to kind of get this thing going. And I'm still enjoying the Residence Inn every day, and all this is still going on. So I would drive over to the local coffee shop, run in there in my suit, change into my coaching clothes, drive over to the field, throw out the blocking dummies and the equipment, throw it down the hill on the field and run down there with just my brain going a million miles an hour about how I don't need to be here because I need to be working. And then as soon as those kids would get out on the field and I would get engaged in coaching them, and just, watching my son looking at me while I'm coaching his team and, just so happy that I was there. It was a really, really huge turning point for me because the 2 or 3 hours that I was out there coaching, I didn't think about anything but coaching. And I don't know that there's anything else on this earth that I could have gone and done that would have taken that stress off of my brain for 2 or 3 hours. I don't think anything else would have done it. And so what started off as a huge burden that I felt like I had no business. I did not have the privilege, the margin, the time. I had nothing. I had no reason to be going to do this coaching, and it was a detriment to this business that I was supposed to be building. It turned out to be maybe one of the things that saved me, because the clarity that I had, the peace of mind that I had when I would leave that practice, I would enjoy it so much, and I would get this just sense of peace. And I would leave practice after having not thought about no clients, no revenues. I hadn't thought about any of that for 2 or 3 hours. I would drive home from practice, and I would just for a few minutes, I would think somehow this is going to be okay. Like, the stress was gone. And of course, by the time I woke up the next morning, it was all back, but it was the only thing that it was worth $5,000 an hour of therapy. It was just, and the bond that, and we ended up going undefeated that season, and we lost in the championship. But I mean, it was just an amazing, it was the highlight of my life at that time. And when I committed to do it, I thought this is going to be the end of me. Like I just committed to do something that's going to, and it ended up being possibly the thing that gave me the clarity when I was in the office to make the right decisions and to say the right things and focus on the clients as they slowly started coming in. So I think, two massive things happened. I quit trying to relive the past and started focusing on what the future was going to be. And I made my kids the priority, because I think for somebody that cares about being a dad, making the kids the priority gives you such a sense of confidence as a dad that carries through in other areas of your life. And, when you don't feel like you're doing a good job as a dad and you feel like you're letting them down or letting yourself down, that carries through into other areas of your life as well. And it deteriorates your confidence in business and in other relationships when you don't feel like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a father. So I think making them the priority is one of the key essentials to someone that cares about their role as a father, because it will carry through into other areas. And I think there's some dads out there that, it was my company, even though it was suffering and, had 2 employees and no revenues, I could set the hours that I wanted to. And I'm sure that there are some dads out there that say, oh, that sounds good, but I don't get off until this time or that time. But I don't think you have to coach. I mean, I think, if your son wants to play football, then, go out and make sure you're in the yard, to make sure you're at the practices, you're in the yard throwing the football with them, you're talking with them about it, you're engaged in it. I don't think it has to be putting yourself as the head coach if you can't live up to your other responsibilities. But I just think them knowing and you knowing that they are the priority allows you to be more confident and stronger and more healthy in other areas if your children are a priority to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's almost counterintuitive that you're leaving work and not putting the time into your career, which you feel like is, what am I doing coaching, my kids' team? I'm coaching my kids' team too. And I have the same thoughts of, I'm driving 35 minutes to get out there, 40 minutes home. The game is a complete shit show. But after you come home and you see how happy your kids are, not only are you reaffirming their relationship with you, I mean, it really must be the most fulfilling thing. And like you said, it sounds like better therapy than anybody could get.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, it was a massive part of that whole process. And, I still have pictures of us storming the field in the big game that we were supposed to lose. And it was, at the time in my life, it was bigger than the Auburn-Alabama game. It was 8-year-old Pee Wee football at NYO with, maybe 100 fans on both teams there. And when we won the big game that we won, it was, again, you just have to take little wins when you can get them. And I didn't have a lot of wins going on at that time. So it was, it was pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's an awesome story. And it is, I think today too, with, your phones, you're 24/7 on call for your clients. It can feel difficult to sacrifice, what it feels like sacrificing your life, your career. But, it is more important than ever to make those sacrifices for your kids. If nothing else, selfishly, it's gonna come back to reward you. It's a really powerful thing because, and I really it resonated with me hearing you say, this is the last thing I should be doing, or I have no business coaching and leaving my job. Because a lot of times once you have that feeling, you say, I'll skip practice today. I won't go to my kid's game. But, at the end of your life, you're not going to be happy that you went back to work that day for 2 more hours, but you will miss going to your kid's game. And it's very cliche to say that, but you have to live it and you have to do it. And a lot of the time you don't really want to do it, but I think it's, the payoff comes even an hour after the practice or the game. So it was really, really awesome to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, I turned 50 this year, and my birthday was in June, and we had a party at my lake house, and I don't know, maybe 30 friends were there, 30 close friends, and a few family members, and my sons were there. And it was unplanned, but at some point at the dinner, I stood up and thanked everybody for being there, and we had a little battery-powered microphone, and somehow the microphone started going around the table, and these friends of mine were saying overly gracious things to me, about me, my character, being a dad, whatever. And it was all very, very rewarding, a bit overwhelming. But the most overwhelming thing that happened was my oldest son stood up and he said, there's a lot of things that my dad and I and my brother have been through that most of you don't know about. And he said, but the one thing I can tell you, that there's never been a day in my life that I didn't know that I was my dad's number one priority. And so, obviously when he said that in front of all these people, it crushed me in a good way. But then I thought, to be turning 50 and have my sons feel that way, then that means I'm a billionaire. I'm a billionaire. I mean, I've won, because no matter what I have in terms of net worth, lack of, or more of, I've got two sons that, on the day I die, then they're going to look at me and say, well done. And that makes me a very, very rich man.
And imagine the modeling that you're doing for your kids when they're going to be parents is, you've already made them good fathers to be. So they're seeing you do it. You're not just talking about it, and you're really showing them how to be dads.
Yeah.
Hopefully not too soon though. They're only 21, so give them a few years.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's hope they enjoy life a little bit before they enjoy their freedom and not having a lot of responsibilities other than work, because then they'll have all those other responsibilities soon enough.
Let's take a quick break for our dad tip of the week, brought to you by Kickstart Reading. Do you have kids between the ages of 3 and 6? I've got 2 boys, and when my older son was going into kindergarten, my wife and I quickly learned that we had no idea how to teach him how to read. We found Kickstart Reading and watched one 2-minute video together, and you could see his confidence take off. Bonus, I felt like Dad of the Year. Here's another dad talking about how Kickstart Reading is helping his boys learn how to read.
Hey there, this is Chris Heller, and I'm a big fan of Kickstart Reading. Each morning before school, I show a video to my 4.5-year-old son, and now his little 2-year-old brother is getting in on the action as well. I'm a big fan of the videos, highly consumable and engaging for young boys. Definite recommend for all parents out there who are looking to get their kids off to the right start with reading. Kickstart Reading.
Go to kickstartreading.com and use the code DAD to get 65% off right now. That's D-A-D, DAD. See? It works. Kickstartreading.com. Now back to the show. Do you think you can share one dad tip for other dads out there?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think, one of the ones I think of a lot, and I talk to a lot of my friends about, almost all of my friends have, much younger kids. I think, never sacrifice being a dad for sake of being a friend. And what I mean by that is, I think kids, even my kids, 23 and 21, I mean, I'm pretty much done parenting them. One of them's about to graduate college. The other one is going to next year. But I think kids desperately want leadership. I think they want discipline, fair discipline. I think they want to be led. They want to be taught. They want to know what your rules are. They want to test your rules, but they want to know that you care enough to enforce the rules. That gives them a sense of security. It gives them a structure. It lets them know you care enough to, it's much easier to just give in to things and not have to have those tough discussions, or not take the keys away, or tell them they can't go to this event, or, take their PlayStation away, or whatever it is, whatever's important to them. But I think it's great to have fun with your kids, and it's great to laugh with them, and, play sports with them, and see movies with them, or go fishing with them, or whatever. your hobbies are that you enjoy doing with them. But I think if you sacrifice that leadership quality that they need so desperately from us as parents for sake of just having good times with them, then I think you're letting them down. You're not making it easier for them. You're preparing them for life to be very tough later when they have to understand what discipline and responsibility, all of those things that we all know as adults come with life. They need to learn from us by being leaders and parents rather than just friends, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, tons. And it is the temptation. And like you said, it's easier to be the friend, but they've got plenty of friends. What they need us to do is to make them feel secure. And sometimes that entails being the bad guy and having them say they hate us and all these things. But that's part of being a dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Hank, let's lighten the mood here for a little bit. Hank, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yes, I am.
All right. Hank McLarty, what is the first car you ever owned?
1984 Ford Bronco.
What is your favorite meal to eat for dinner?
Oh, gosh. If I'm going to cheat, I guess lasagna is my favorite, but I don't eat it very often because I'm not a huge cheat meal guy. But if I'm going to cheat, I love lasagna.
What is your favorite movie? We'll start with drama.
Gosh. Okay, this is going to sound cheesy, but I guess probably Gladiator, only because I love movies like Gladiator, Braveheart, movies like that where the character is fighting for something that's much bigger than themselves. They're kind of in the middle of a flow, going towards a mission or something that's much bigger than themselves, and I think we all kind of crave to be in that kind of a mission in some aspect of our life. So I've watched both of those probably 500 times.
Yeah, that's a great one. I thought you were going to say Rocky, another similar story. What about a comedy? You ever lighten the mood? What's your favorite comedy movie?
Yeah, what's the football movie with Burt Reynolds and Adam Sandler? I'm saying it's one of my favorites.
Prison one?
Yeah, I'm saying it's one of my favorites, and I can't even think of the name.
Longest Yard.
Yeah, Longest Yard. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yes. Do you have a favorite live concert that you've seen?
Only because it's top of mind. I recently went. I saw this supposedly final tour of Elton John recently with a group of friends, and I like hard rock music and so forth, but Elton John's concert was great just because it's hard not to know all the words to his songs, and we were with a great group of friends and just had a great time. So that was recent, and that was definitely one of the better concerts I've seen. I thought it was really good.
And lastly, what is your most memorable athletic achievement?
Obviously earning that goal, working really hard, getting that goal to play at Auburn. I think, that's probably the achievement. Memory would probably be running out of the tunnel the year we played Alabama for the first time in Auburn in 1989, because it's the only time in my life I can ever remember where I couldn't feel my feet hitting the ground. The adrenaline and the energy was so huge that I literally could not feel, my feet as they hit the ground, and it was an amazing night. So yeah, I doubled up on that answer.
Well, and also your coaching moment of your kids winning or getting to the championship. That's got to be up there as well.
Yeah. Yep. That would be, if you ask me, probably my greatest achievement as a father.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
One of them. We
just won our first basketball game. We scored 6 points, but somehow the other team only scored 2. So we got a lot of work to do in that category. But it is fun and rewarding.
Well, you got the W though.
Exactly, that's what I told them. So let's talk a little bit about where you're at now. You're founded Gratus Capital, and you've come a long way since those low moments. Talk a little bit about what you guys do at Gratus.
Yeah. So when I started the company with a receptionist, as I mentioned when I was coaching that football team, I started the company, and this was when I started looking forward and not looking backwards. And even naming the company, I didn't want the name of our company to have anything to do with Wall Street or money or, of course, my last name. And so I named the company Gratus Capital because gratis is the Latin word for grateful. And I wanted to build a wealth management firm that was founded on the principles of gratitude with the people that we hire on the team, with our clients, that we would do wealth management in a very different way. And we're really in the business at my firm of taking care of people. So I started the company in 2005, with no clients and really just a name that said grateful. And over the last 15 years, we've grown dramatically. We're now over $2 billion in assets, and we're ranked by Forbes as one of the top 100 firms in the United States out of like 500,000 firms. So we've had phenomenal growth, and we have a great, talented team here of investment managers and advisors and financial planners and CPAs and attorneys, and we just had a great level of success, and we have a wonderful group of clients that we work with, both here in Atlanta and Birmingham and Palm Beach, Florida, Wilmington, North Carolina, and then pretty much every state in the United States we have a client exposure somewhere, but those are our concentrations of clients.
Yeah, and I know, it is, I know a lot of people in the wealth management business, and it is really a people business. And just listening to you today, you can see why, why people connect with you and why people trust you, and, that you are looking to take care of them in more ways than just their investments. It really is a life planning thing. So I think that's really admirable what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I have led this firm, since I started it, and I use the word passion constantly when I talk with my team here and when I talk with our clients. Even our vision statement for the firm is to passionately empower our clients, employees, and community to live, grow, and give. And so, we do a ton of community service work. We work very closely as a team, and we work very closely with our clients. But I just think the word passion, how many times do you associate the word passion with wealth management? It's not often you hear those words in the same sentence together. So, my job here at the firm is to make sure that we passionately take care of our clients like their family. And that we passionately look out for each other as team members, and that when we're in the community doing our quarterly community service projects, that we show up, passionately wanting to impact this area of the community, whatever it is we're working on. And so even back in the early days when I had a great deal of success, I don't see a lot of people in this business happy. I don't see them passionately wanting to take care of clients and come work in their office with their teams and so forth. And I think that's one of the reasons we've had so much success, is that our team cares a great deal, and that starts at the top. It's my job to make sure that no matter how much we grow as we execute our vision over the next 10 years, that we maintain that level of passion, because I truly believe that's what makes us so special and why we've had so much success with our clients.
Yeah, you certainly walk the walk, and just hearing the way you talk about your family, I think would instantly show people what kind of man you are, what kind of father you are, and how that translates into your business as well. Real quick to end it, I wanted to talk to you. I heard you speak about you talk a lot about, spending time with your kids and your business, but I know spending time with your friends is a big part of your life, and that you have your big five, I think you talked about. I think a lot of dads kind of get lost as they get, hit 30 or 40 with kids, that we do lose that kind of connection with our friends. But it is such an important part of, a dad's life. Why is that so important to you, and what kind of things are you doing with your friends, and who are you choosing to spend your time with?
Yeah, so it's you were close. It's not the big five; it's the great eight. So I have a group of friends there's 8 of us. We call ourselves the Great Eight. And we get together for dinner every month. And we hold each other accountable as fathers. And we set goals with our business. We set goals personally with our fitness. And I mean, we probably get, 25 texts a day within our little Grade 8 text group of, how did this meeting go? How did your workout go? Did you hit your goal? And then it's constant. And then, a lot of our meetings we're presenting or updating our goals to the group and so forth. And I think the most important thing about this group is that whenever I've had a success and they've been around, they almost seem more happy about my success than I am. Mm-hmm. And so I think having that group, that core group of people in your life that literally want more for you than you even want for yourself and are genuinely happy and excited when you have achievements, and they're sad or they're let down when you don't and they want to help. Having people that are not envious of success or that just, it's a pure relationship. And so, I mean, we've all got friends that would much rather have us out drinking with them or, doing things that are going to pull us away from our focus or our goals. But I think, you've heard that statement, you are the top 5 people you spend the most time with. You become those 5 people. And so if you're hanging out, if your top 5 people include people that are pulling you down and could care less about you becoming a better leader, a better father, a better husband, or, whatever your role is, then that's what you're going to gravitate towards. If you are surrounding yourself with people that literally inspire you and challenge you, and you don't want to disappoint them because you care so much about their opinion of you, and in a good way, in a healthy way, you care about their opinion of you and you want to succeed because they're going to be literally more excited about your success than you are, then you're going to gravitate. You're going to push yourself. I don't want to disappoint these guys. I mean, anytime I speak or if I break a personal record at the gym or whatever, the first thing I do is update them. And the first thing I get is 7 responses back almost immediately, like, way to go. I start getting phone calls. How did it go? How did you feel? Whatever. It's a critical component of my discipline, my habits, and me not wanting to disappoint this group. And I say disappoint in a healthy way, not in an unhealthy way, but it's a critical thing to have. I think especially, gosh, if I'd have had that going on when I was going through living in a hotel, if I'd have had this group of men in my life at that time, then things would have been, I think they've turned out really well, but the pain and everything that I was going through, if I would have just had this group to push me and just to bounce things off of, it would have made things significantly different and better during that time period.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. And it is something that takes intention and effort, especially as you get older. You're used to cruising through the college days with your college friends. And at a certain point, especially once you start having kids, you do have to maybe shed some of the fat and make choices and, connect with people that resonate more with your beliefs and goals. So that's great to hear. And I think a lot of dads, we need to hear that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, Hank McLarty, it was such a pleasure hearing your story. Really incredible. I have to give you a War Eagle, even though I'm not an Auburn guy, but thank you so much for being on the Dad the Best I Can podcast. Where can people learn more about you and follow what you're doing?
Oh, yeah. Great question. So, our website, gratuscapital.com, that's GRATUS, gratuscapital.com, or email, info@gratuscapital.com. And then we're also on LinkedIn, LinkedIn at Gratus Capital. So, people can get in touch with me, my team, at those locations, and would love to hear from anybody that wants to learn more.
All right, Hank, really a pleasure. I appreciate you sharing your story, and hope to talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure of mine as well.
Thank you guys for listening to the Dad the Best I Can show. Go take 5 seconds, hop on over to dadthebestican.com and sign up with your email to get weekly updates, dad tips in your mailbox. Get your questions answered on the show. That's dadthebestican.com. If If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Actually, 5 stars. We could do better than that. Brooks?
Infinity.
Infinity stars. Cameron? How many stars?
Infinity 1,000.
Infinity 1,000. You gotta one-up them in this household. Thanks. See ya.